It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Yeah, let's get the pleasantries out of the way. The Mets get swept of this brief two-game series against the Philadelphia Phillies. And for the first time all season, I am worried. I admit that. I am very, very, very worried. Now, for those watching live on YouTube, I don't know why the Knicks are playing, but I DVR'd the Knicks game because I told Pete Hoffman, we got to talk about baseball. We have to address this two-game series, and we have to address the moves the Mets are making in response to their recent struggles. Let's start with why I'm worried. Why I'm worried is this. All offseason long, really, I guess the latter part of the offseason and going into spring training and early this season, the faith I had in this team to be good was based on this offense being a strength, was based on the fact that they'll get average starting pitching, they'll have a lockdown bullpen, and they will resemble more the 2022 offense than the 2023 offense. It is now the middle of May. And for all of us, there comes a different time in the season where you start to get worried. We are in the middle of May, and the guys that are supposed to hit, the guys that are supposed to be the stalwarts in this lineup, the guys we're supposed to rely on, the core, as some of you refer to them as, they have done crap. And while, look, at the end of the day, will Lindor put up his numbers? Will Pete put up his numbers? Maybe. I don't know. But right now, there's no sign of life. And every time Lindor gets hot, he takes a step back. Every time Pete gets hot, he takes a step back. Brandon Nimmo's recently got hot. Well, not really. Not the last two games. He had a big-time home run on Sunday night. It bailed us all out from a sweep. What has he done since? And don't get me started on Jeff McNeil. You've already heard my concerns. I just don't even think you could trust Jeff McNeil anymore. You combine that with the fact that Tyrone Taylor has come back to earth. Starling Marte looks like a shell of his former self. Brett Baty doesn't look like a major leaguer. They are getting next to no offense from catcher. And truthfully, Tomas Nido is a bigger threat than Omar Narvaez. You combine that together, and you have the crap we have watched for the last few weeks. But the other thing I'm concerned about, and I remember a few Ricos ago saying, I'm not there yet. I'm here. I'm concerned about this closer. I'm concerned about Edwin Diaz. Because look, when you are the Mets, when your margin for error is so tiny, and it is, you can't blow Monday's game. And they did. You can't blow 2 weeks ago against the Tampa Bay Rays with a one-run lead and 2 outs and 2 strikes in the 9th inning against the guy hitting 140, and he did. And you can't throw a cookie to Christopher Morel on a Monday night against the Cubs, and you did. So we all love Edwin Diaz. We all love the trumpets. I loved his attitude after the game. He put the blame on himself, and that's great. And I don't think he's wilting under the pressure by any stretch. I don't think this is a Armando Benitez situation. But right now, can you trust Edwin Diaz? He has had a very mediocre stretch. He's had a very mediocre year. For whatever reason, on back-to-backs, he can't pitch well. The Mets don't use him 3 days in a row. Watch him on 2 days in a row. He's been awful. And so for a bullpen that, for the most part, has been a strength of this team, you can't rely on the closer. And it sucks that I'm saying that in the middle of May, but that's where I'm at. Now, can he turn things around and save 30 games in a row? I hope so. Can Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso turn their seasons around? I hope so. But right now, especially because of how they lost, and we'll get into the games, and especially because of who they lost to, and when you factor in how they lost, I think I already said that already, yeah, I'm freaking worried. Look, the good news is, it takes a lot to bury yourself in the National League wildcard race. So despite this, they're a game and a half out. And that matters. You win a couple of games in a row, you could erase that. But it's more the way they're playing. Now, let me get to the moves they made, and then we'll recap the games. Recapping the games is kind of like last on the list. And there's a ton of emails of people who are pissed and angry, some at me, some at the team, and that's fine. So I was on the radio on Tuesday as this game ended. I didn't say anything about the blown game with Edwin Diaz. And by the way, I should have done a Rico after. The problem was I was on DVR. I finished the game at midnight. So it would have been a very, very late Rico. But truthfully, I should have done it because I was pissed. That was the worst loss of the season. And what I tell everybody, if you're new to the Rico, is jot down the great wins and jot down the bad losses as they happen. Not because I want to give homework assignments, but because the fairest way to determine accurately if that's the worst loss of the season, other than just saying it because you're hyperbolic, is to compare it to the other losses. And I did that. I've been jotting down losses all season long. And this one is at the top of the list. It was a brutal, brutal loss on Monday night. But I was on the radio with Tiki after they completed the 4-0 listless game to Aaron Nola and the Philadelphia Phillies. And as I was crying and complaining and doing what I do, which is complain, I admit it, I offered a solution. And I said to Tiki, I like to be someone who offers those solutions. So let me tell you what I would do other than crying about it. Number one, I would call up Mark Vientos. Mark Vientos should have made the team out of spring training. He should have. Said it right here on the Rico. And he shouldn't have been sent down when he showed a pulse, including hitting a game-winning home run. It was a mistake to send him down. Now, I get it. It was complicated, and we debated it on who you should send down. So my first response was, call up Mark Vientos. Give him a chance to play. Brett Baty has been now an offensive disaster at third base. You want to tell me he's improved defensively? He has. We'll all be the first to admit it. But you got to hit. And Brett Baty has not hit enough. So my answer on the air was, well, I'll just make it neat and organized. I'll send down Brett Baty. Because I don't know what the other options were. Now, you may not know this, so this could be breaking news from me. I'm not reporting it. Joe Sherman is. The guy they're getting rid of, I don't know if Hoffman knows it, to be perfectly honest with you. But the guy they're sending down is actually a guy they're DFAing. And they are DFAing Joey Wendell. Now, let me take the shots that you want to throw at me because I dismissed that idea 2 weeks ago. And it would never happen. And by the way, I stand by everything I said because I think it's illogical long-term to not have a backup middle infielder on your roster, which the Mets do not have. They don't have that. So they're DFAing Joey Wendell, who deserves to be, I don't want to say DFA, he deserves to be punished for the way he's played. He's been horrible for a month and a half. I never defended that. His defense has been bad, which he's supposed to be good at. He can't get an effing bunt down when they're asking him something so freaking simple in the 10th inning on Monday, lay a bunt down. So yes, did Joey Wendell deserve our scorn? Absolutely. I just never thought they would DFA him, after giving him a major league contract. But you know what? That ain't my issue. Pay him the money, go away. That's fine. My issue was, how do you have a roster without a backup middle infielder? So what I will say to the Rico audience is, my mistake, I apologize, because I was clearly wrong, thinking they would never do it. But I voiced the same concern. Not a concern that Joey Wendell needed to be on the team, but you don't have a backup shortstop. You don't have a backup second baseman. So that is not something that can last a long time. With that said, I'm glad Vientos is here. So Pete, speaking for the Rico audience who wanted Joey Wendell gone, take your freaking bows.
Thank you. I will take all of them. I'm happy for this moment. And again, listen, I just want to tell you something. Calm down, relax, because you're right. This has been a terrible start to the season. I am not worried, though, because David Stearns is not effing around. I mean, that's what I've been saying. Like Johan Ramirez is gone again, too, by the way, so there's more room. And he is not going to – Joey Wendell, Jose Quintana better clean up his act, or his ass is out of here, too. Like, and whether it's a trade or DFA or whatever – they are evaluating on the fly, and they're not messing around. And listen, Zach Short, we've gone through the laundry list of people, Tonkin, we've gone through the people that have been here and gone already, and there's going to be more. And listen, that may be Jeff McNeil as well.
Wow. They're not going to DFA him as much as Joe and Clark wants that on social media. You have made the point for a while that you love the fact that, hey, they mean business. They'll just DFA a guy. I always thought all those moves that you just mentioned were more roster cleaning moves. You know, hey, we need another pitcher up here because we use our bullpen a lot. Unfortunately, we got to DFA this guy. We got to DFA that guy. What I will give you, though, Pete, is this is the first time. I'm with you. This is the first time where I say, wow, they mean business, because they literally didn't DFA a guy to just make room for another bullpen arm. And, oh, by the way, claim the guy back 2 weeks later, which they've done with numerous guys from Michael Tompkin to now Yohan Ramirez. This was literally, hey, here's a Major League Baseball player. And Joey Wendell is, as much as we may hate him right now, he is a Major League Baseball player who has gotten off to a bad start defensively and offensively, and we're just going to DFA him. We're going to cut our losses. So I do agree that this is in my opinion, the first example of them doing that. And I understand the need for a spark. And I think Mark Vientos is the right guy to supply that spark. I absolutely love that. I just don't know if it's sustainable necessarily to not have a backup middle infielder. And don't take this as me complaining. I am not complaining. I am thrilled that they called up Mark Vientos. I have no love loss for Joey Wendell. It's just more of a reminder of, hey, Jose Iglesias is coming up here at some point, because that's the logical guy in their system who they would call up and be the guy who could play shortstop and play second base. And by the way, here's what's great about this. We've seen Jose Iglesias in the major leagues. We've seen Jose Iglesias in spring training. That guy can field. That guy will not make the mistakes that Joey Wendell has made defensively so far as a Met.
And if he does screw up, he's gone too.
Yes. No, you know who I think is on the hot seat right now? Brett Baty. I think that this move of calling up Mark Vientos puts him on notice. It does. And it tells him, look, we're going to give Mark Vientos a chance to play. It's mostly going to be at third base. I don't think they're sitting Pete Alonso. I don't think he's seriously hurt. I know he had that collision with the fence. JD will get his seats. Don't get me wrong. Like, JD Martinez will probably sit here and there. That is clearly going to continue. So there could be ways where both guys are in the lineup. But I think this move is, hey, you're on notice, Brett. We're not sending you down. But if you don't start shaping up, and if Vientos starts hitting, we will send you down. So thinking more long-term, or at least long-term in terms of the next few weeks, on when they would call up another middle infielder, I think Brett Baty's the guy who's got to figure it out. And lefty-righty, I don't want to see it. I want Mark Vientos in the lineup tomorrow night. Now, they are facing, if memory serves correct, they are facing a lefty tomorrow. Ranger Suarez, I think, is making the start tomorrow, Wednesday, if you're listening on Wednesday. And then Taijuan Walker is pitching on Thursday, a righty. I'd have Vientos play both games. I think he should face righties. I think he should face lefties. And I think we should give him a nice, long look. He has earned that.
You know, and I feel bad about this, saying this in advance, but Mark Vientos is going to go 0 for 4 tomorrow with 4 strikeouts. Ranger Suarez is going to be a Cy Young this year. So let's hold our expectations down a little bit.
No.
I agree with you. He should play every day, but it's not going to happen, especially if he gets an over tomorrow.
No, I don't think you can do it like that. I think, unfortunately, when Vientos was up here temporarily, it was temporarily. Starling Marte was on the grievance list. The grievance list, I'm sorry. He was on the he was grieving. What is that list called again? My apologies.
Bereavement
list. Thank you very much. And so you knew it was short-lived. And so, yeah, like every game was, hey, that's the audition for him to stick around. And even though he performed, he didn't stick around. I think Vientos is here. I think he clearly gets the next couple of weeks. No doubt about it. Look, the other option they had was to send down DJ Stewart. They didn't want to do that because, honestly, DJ Stewart has the highest OPS on the team. I mean, I know he doesn't have the highest batting average, but he's actually been relatively productive. The other move they made, you referred to it, Yohan Ramirez got DFA'd because Joey Lucchesi is starting on Wednesday. Now, Joey deserves it. If you look at Lucchesi's numbers in AAA, he's been phenomenal. He's pitched to a very low ERA. His strikeout numbers are way down, but whatever. He pitched to like a 2.80 ERA. But the reason he's starting is so stupid to me, because Adrian Hauser started warming up in the 9th inning. Can I give you some fan fiction, some Rico Brogna fan fiction? This is clearly not true, but I'll be the first to just give you some fiction anyway.
Conspiracy theory type of stuff, or
it's not even a conspiracy theory. It's like probably not true, but you'll buy it. I can see you saying, you know what, that's true. Adrian Hauser has stunk. Now, he's been terrible. He was taken out of the rotation temporarily for Christian Scott. Christian Scott earned remaining in the rotation. And it's almost like David Stearns called up Carlos Mendoza and said, look, that's my boy. That's my boy, man. I traded for that guy. I like Adrian Hauser. We trust him. Can you slot him in to make a start? And Mendy rolls his eyes and says, okay, whatever. And then On Tuesday, in a 4-0 game, he says, you know what I'll do? I'll warm up Hauser. And then I'll call up David after the game and say, oh, oops, I can't start him. He was warming up in the bullpen in a game I never went to him in. I know that's not true, but you totally buy that, Pete, right?
Oh, that's exactly what he did. 100%. I don't. If that's the only thing that's even plausible.
Yeah, I mean, because otherwise, what are you doing, Carlos? Literally, you're in a 4-0 game. You're warming up tomorrow night's starting pitch. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense.
What's the term that Mickey Callaway used to use? Dry humping guys?
Yeah, they dry humped Adrian Hauser out of making Wednesday's start in Philadelphia. And I got no problem with that. I didn't need to see Adrian Hauser again. So,
bold strategy, Cotton. Bold strategy.
Yeah. So Lucchesi comes up. Johan Ramirez is gone. Let me mix in some of your angry emails, and then we'll recap these two games. First, Michael writes, the Mets paid the Orioles $19 million to take James McCann so they could open the roster spot to spend $15 million on Omar Narvaez. Dude, Omar Narvaez stinks. My apologies. You know, me pushing him over Tomas Nido over the last few weeks. I'm sorry.
Dude,
I'm sorry.
Let me explain something to you. First of all, there was the article with Sandy and Billy Epler. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about that at all. But Billy Epler didn't really have a clue of what he was doing. They brought in Omar Narvaez. He was never going to be that guy anyway. There was other options they could have done. And if there was any possibility of trading him in the offseason, that was the way to go. Instead, we're just going to be eating money and just, it sucks. It sucks.
You know what the problem is as bad as Narvaez is, there's not a lot of good catchers in baseball. So it's easy to say, well, just get rid of him. Tomas Nido will be the backup, and then Alvarez gets hurt, and now you've got to call somebody up. So unfortunately, there are not a lot of good catchers. I do think it's funny that they're paying all this money for James McCann to not exist, and now they're paying even more money for Omar Narvaez to exist. Nicholas writes, Evan, you watch 100 times as many Mets games as I do. I've never thought Pete Alonso is worth signing to a mega contract. As a fan who endured 77 through 83, the team was more enjoyable to root for. Get these stats. In 1983, Rusty Staub had 28 RBIs in 142 plate appearances. Pete has 22 RBIs in 175 plate appearances. Look, here's the thing about Pete Alonso. And I really hate engaging in these off-season discussions in the middle of a season. Pete Alonso's value will take care of itself. Okay? Right now, and I remember saying this last year when there were rumors about them shopping him or talking to Milwaukee about trading him. I'm not sure he was going to get back as much in prospects as you want. Now, you could take that and say, see, Evan, that he's not as good as you think. That's not even the point. Like, I don't think they were going to get back nearly as much as some thought, hence why the Mets never got close to trading him. This year's the same thing. Like, it's easy to say, well, trade Pete. What are they getting? And by the way, if they're not getting a lot and you don't want to sign him, like I am on the line of thinking for the sake of this discussion, you're not signing him, you'll be better off getting a compensatory pick where you can draft somebody you want instead of taking prospects you don't even love. That's number two. And number three, let the Alonso contract stuff take care of itself. If he has a shitty season, he's not getting what he wants. And then the Mets can get him back on a reasonable contract. So stop with this. They got to trade him now. Unfortunately, they're not trading him now. They shouldn't trade him now. I didn't even say unfortunately. Dan, and I want to apologize to Dan. Dan's the guy who I sort of make fun of. He's like the character in Major League 2 who hates the Mets. I questioned his fanhood last time on the Rico. I didn't mean to do that. He's like a character now. So my apologies. You are a real fan. You're just really negative, and that's okay. Dan is upset with something I said on the radio earlier today on Tuesday, and I'll clarify what I said. I said most Met fans' concerns about this team was about the starting pitching and not about the offense. And I stand by that. Now, Dan was concerned about the offense, and that's fine. I'm not saying every single Met fan. I'm sure there were Rico listeners or just Met fans in general who said, hey, I think this team's going to stink because I think they're going to score 4.2 runs per game. And that's not enough. And if that's the case, so far you've been right. But most of the talk around the Mets was they don't have enough pitching. We even talked about it. They don't have enough pitching. And the truth is, we are now a quarter of the way through the season. We are a little bit past that 25% mark of this season. Their starting pitching has been good enough. Their bullpen, for the most part, outside of Diaz's struggles, has been awesome. They are not hitting. They're not hitting, and their defense overall hasn't been good. And they can't throw a guy out trying to steal second base. Like, those are the main reasons why they're 3 games under 500. So, look, it's difficult sometimes when you talk about this is what fans thought. Obviously, we're not monolithic. Like, I can't say everybody thought that. But in general, the main concern about this team was their pitching, not necessarily their offense. That's my point. And so far, their pitching hasn't been the problem. Nick writes, I love Lindor, but we've reached a point where he needs to be held accountable. It's the middle of May. He has a 204 average and a 655 OPS. That's embarrassing. He's not even a starting caliber offensive player. He needs to be dropped in the order to no higher than 5. So, Nick, here's the issue. I am with you on Lindor's struggles. Everybody's struggling. We've gone through the names. We don't need to pick which one's the worst because that's obvious. It's Jeff McNeil. But if you want to play this game, don't take this as a defense of Francisco Lindor. I'm not defending him. He needs to be better, as does Pete, who everybody thinks is my boy because I'm growing my beard out. He has sucked. And you want me to say it over and over again? He hasn't been good enough. They need to be better, clearly. But we talk about dropping guys in the order. Okay, you want to hit Lindor 5th. Who are you moving around? Right now, nobody is performing. Nobody's hitting. So what's the lineup? Now, I will tell you, and it's probably Pete's idea and a lot of people in the Rico email, because we've talked a lot about lineup construction, and I have been content with the way they've lined them up. I am open to change right now when they're struggling the way they're struggling. I am not going to bang my head against the wall and just say, keep the lineup, keep the lineup, keep the lineup. Like, yeah, I've had my preferences, but I also believe that when you're struggling, you got to try something. Calling up Mark Vientos is trying something. I am good with that. So I would try something with the lineup. So I half agree with Nick. I would shake it up. The problem is Lindor batting 8th or batting 5th or 6th. There's no great answer to it because who are you moving up, Jeff McNeil? Who are you moving up? So I'm going to tell you what I would do. And again, we've talked about this a little bit. You've brought this up, Pete. There have been emailers about this. I'm now fully on board with this specific lineup change starting Wednesday in Philadelphia. I would lead off Francisco Lindor. And that is not a promotion. That's trying to get a guy out of a slump, a season-long slump. And my rationale behind it is you basically tell Francisco, get on base. And oh, by the way, when you do get on base, take second base. You know, the thing that everybody does against the Mets, and you apply the tag 5 seconds late, not your fault. That's what I want you to do. So it's not burying the guy, but it's also not rewarding the guy. It's trying something different. Lead off Francisco Lindor, and I would bat Brandon Nimmo number 2. The perk in that is Nimmo sees so many pitches, which I still love at the top of the order. I think that benefits everyone else. And you give Lindor more opportunities to steal second base. Lindor 1, I would go Nimmo 2. And then, by the way, you know who I'd go 3? One or the other, J.D. Martinez or Pete Alonso. You want to split up Lindor and Pete? I mean, you're already doing it because Lindor is sitting first. Or you want to move, go J.D. 3. I got no problem with that. And again, all of these guys I'm mentioning, they're not hitting either. So it's not as if we're rewarding somebody because you really can't. There's nobody that you'd be rewarding. DJ Stewart isn't even an everyday player, and he's got the best OPS on the team. So that would be my change because I do believe that when you are a struggling team, you've got to try something. I also have another apology. I got a lot of apologies. All right. Jimmy. I keep screwing up the pronunciation of his last name. But Jimmy K is a guy I got mad at on the last Rico because Jimmy K accused me of saying Brandon Nimmo, that I had said Brandon Nimmo was the best defensive center fielder in Met history, which is a stupid, stupid comment. But Jimmy brought the receipts, and he actually found a piece of audio from the Rico in which I was clearly, my head was up my ass. I was very excited about some great Nimmo plays, and I uttered something very, very similar to that. So I told Jimmy, because I wrote to him privately, and I said, Jimmy, my apologies. I will apologize to you publicly. and I'll probably give you Met tickets, which I'm definitely doing. So my apologies, Jimmy, for publicly shaming you.
Question.
Yes.
Was it on the episode that we were drinking on?
No. Oh. Does that get me out of it if that was the case?
Well, that's an excuse. That's a built-in excuse that nothing of that is liable.
Either way, you're right, but either way, I owe it to him because I was still the person that said, there's no way I said it. There's no way I said it. So my apologies to Jimmy. Brett Tyson writes, and after this email, we'll get to the two games. I'll recap it, give you my thoughts. Brett writes, guys, just think about how utterly overmatched Brett Baty has looked lately and how he's now at almost 600 MLB plate appearances into his career, and it looks like he may never have the bat to stick as an everyday player, let alone be the star that the Mets thought he may be. I'm legitimately worried about Baty being able to figure it out, but I'm also very worried about how long the Mets can continue to keep running him out there until they have to make a change for the good of the club. In turn, this got me thinking about Alec Bohm, who is considered a disappointment for the Phillies through almost 2,000 plate appearances until finally seeing him hit his stride this year. Granted, it's early, and I don't think Bohm is one of the best 10 players in the game, as the early stats say, but even if he's 75% of this, he'll be a pain in the ass for a long time. It's not a perfect comparison because Bohm was largely league average during his first 5 years, and Baty has been decidedly below average. But I wonder if the Mets and the fans could ever stick with a young, highly touted player through 4 disappointing years, and if not, is that a weakness, Brett? So it's a great question, and it's the old question of how long can you be patient? How long can you stick with a young player struggling? The answer, and it's not really a fair answer, but I'll give you an answer that I think a lot of Met fans and baseball fans will think and believe, even if they don't admit it. You will stick with them longer if your team is winning anyway. And I know that has nothing to do with the development of a young player, but think about what we're talking about right now. The New York Mets offensive struggles are largely based on Francisco Lindor, Jeff McNeil, Pete Alonso, and at times Brandon Nimmo, right? Like the core guys, the star players on the team are not performing like, quote, the back of the baseball card. And we're not benching them because you can't, but we are talking about, hey, call up Mark Vientos. Now, imagine a situation where all those guys I mentioned are performing and they're hitting and the Mets are winning and Brett Baty is doing the exact same thing. Are they calling up Mark Vientos today? I'll help you out. The answer is probably not. Probably not. So unfortunately, Lindor, Alonso, McNeil not performing negatively impacts Brett Baty because I don't think the Mets make this move if they don't blow Monday night's game. I don't think they don't make this move if the Mets aren't winning games because their offense is showing up. They have pitched well enough in every game of this series. That Quintana on Friday, borderline. They've pitched well enough to win all these games. All they needed to do was be a league average offense, and maybe we're talking about a 4-1, 5-0 homestand as opposed to what we just saw, which was 1-4. So it's a great question on how long you should stick with a player. There are a lot of examples of guys that got off to bad starts. Dustin Pedroia in Boston, they stuck with him. They got the reward. You're certainly seeing it firsthand with Alec Bohm. So, yeah, it's a tough thing to answer, man, because you would hate to see Brett Baty stick somewhere else. Look, we saw with Travis d'Arnaud, and I know it's not the perfect comparison, but look at Travis d'Arnaud. There's no great answer. Let's get to these games. Let me start with the finale of this series on Tuesday afternoon, a rare Tuesday afternoon game at Citi Field. Number one, Jose Butto was fine. He was. I get 4 walks in 5 innings is not good, and he hit a batter. He gave up 1 hit, and he gave up 2 runs. And ultimately, here's the stat that matters. Jose Butto, who is a back-of-the-rotation arm who's trying to prove himself as a major leaguer, pitched 5 innings and allowed 2 runs against the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, granted, it's the Phillies without Bryce Harper. It's the Phillies without Trey Turner. I get all that. Castellanos has had a terrible season. I get all of it. Jose Butto was not the problem. Unfortunately, the problem was he hit Alec Bohm with the bases loaded. That's the problem. But it was yet another performance by Butto that I don't want to say was impressive because I think after a while, you don't want to see him walk a million guys. You don't want to see him throw a lot of pitches and only be able to go 5 innings. But bottom line was he was good. He was good enough. He was good enough. The Met bullpen until the very end with Sean Reed Foley was good enough. And they were walking guys. Jake Diekman walked 3 guys. Ultimately, they pitched well enough. The problem was Pete Alonso grounds into a massive double play. They're getting no hit into the 5th inning. And yes, Aaron Nola is good, but not this. You're talking about a complete game shutout in 2024. The Mets couldn't draw a walk. He was just going through them so easily. His pitch count was incredibly low, and it was just awful. It was all, and it came down to the offense again. 5 innings, 2 runs should be enough. It should be enough. You should win that game. And this game had a level of importance that was added because of what happened on Monday. Monday, to me, was the worst loss of the season. It was the worst loss of the season for so many ways. You want to count the ways? Fine, let's count the ways. They give up a bunt base hit as the only Philadelphia run early in this game. They get big hits in response, including J.D. Martinez delivering an RBI double. And then they get a huge base hit by Tomas Nido in which they're playing hit and run, which was great to see. How often do you see that? Hits the ball right to second base. Bryson Stott leaves his position because I think it was Harrison Bader running. Harrison Bader was running, and the Mets immediately get you 2 runs. Here's when I knew they were in trouble. In the 3rd inning, they are going to chase Christopher Sanchez. They're going to get this guy out of the game. They get a leadoff double by Starling Marte, a walk to Lindor, a base hit to Alonso, and then JD has this great at-bat drawing a bases-loaded walk. You're up 3-1. The bases are loaded and nobody out. Bust the game open. Get to the Phillies bullpen. And instead, we see Brett Baty strike out. We see Harrison Bader strike out. And worst of all, we see Jeff McNeil strike out on a pitch that wasn't even close. And not only did the Mets strike out 3 times in a row, I don't know if I've ever seen this before. Sanchez did it immaculately. So after loading up the bases and issuing a bases-loaded walk, the guy throws 9 pitches and strikes out 3 guys in a row. And even though you're up 3-1 and you still have a lead, bad sign. It's a bad sign when the offense gets stymied like that. They had other opportunities. 6th inning, they got another golden opportunity when Christopher Sanchez didn't catch a ball thrown to him at first base on a ground ball to first base. They're set up. Starling Marte grounds out. They're set up in the 7th inning. They got the bases loaded with 1 out. Now they get to the Phillies bullpen. Bader strikes out, and Jeff McNeil, who is such a freaking disaster, hits a lazy fly ball to center field. He has been so bad, and every time he looks surprised. That's the other thing. He's surprised every time he pops up and grounds out. What are you surprised about, Jeff? You suck. You haven't been good. You haven't been good in a year and a half, and you're surprised? I'm not surprised. Hoff's not surprised. Nobody listening is surprised. Now let's get to the managing. So Sean Manaea gives you 6 brilliant innings. Brilliant innings. Pitched a really strong game. Only walked 1 batter. Didn't have to labor, but his pitch count's 100, and clearly the Mets are looking for 9 outs from this bullpen. 9 outs. Jorge Lopez gets into trouble. They give up a run on a ground out. Adam Ottavino comes in the 7th inning. I like that move. I like him being aggressive. Going to Ottavino, gets out of the 7th inning. Here's where things were interesting. So you get Ottavino to get you through the 7th. The heart of the batting order is coming up in the 8th, and I thought about going to Diaz, like the point I always make. Let me go to one of my best relievers with the heart of the order coming up. The problem is you've just used Ottavino, and you think you can get more out of him. So why would you take him out? So I agreed with him, Mendy, of sticking with Otto, mainly because I've only gotten 2 outs from him. I think I can get more. And Ottavino dominated that 8th inning. I mean, he made it look so freaking easy against Bohm, against Harper, and against Castellanos. And now we get to the 9th inning. And this is the inning I'm going to think about because the leadoff home run of Bryson Stott, fine, whatever. You got a 2-run lead. I'd rather you give up a bomb than walk a hitter. gives up a base hit to Sosa, and then here's the sequence that's the sequence that really just drove me nuts. He walks Brandon Marsh on 4 pitches, and he's not even close. 2 on, nobody out, 1-run lead, and then we get the tease. Then we get what looks to be Diaz getting through the inning, striking out Kyle Schwarber, getting Garrett Stubbs to pop out. Clearly, JT Realmuto wasn't available, and now you are set up 2 on, 2 out with Merrifield. Get him out. I don't want to deal with Bohm. I don't want to deal with Harper. Get Whit Merrifield out. Whit Merrifield makes Jeff McNeil look decent, sitting 205, and he walks him. Oh, and I know it was a BS walk because of the check swing. I get it. It was a missed call. It was a terrible call. I understand. And that wasn't the only missed call in that at-bat, but still, you got to overcome it. And now you're ahead of Alec Bohm 0-2. If they get swept in Philly and this season derails even more, I'm going to think about that 9th inning. He is ahead of Alec Bohm 0-2, who the Mets had handled all night long, and he effing hits him. Oh, God. He hits him. Bury a slider. Throw a fastball up. The one thing you can do, there are 2 things you can't do. You can't hit him. You can't throw a wild pitch. Give yourself a chance to get out of the freaking inning. And I hate to admit it, I thought he was going to. I went up and down that inning. When he got those 2 outs and Merrifield came up, I thought he was getting out of it. When he walks Merrifield, I think we're screwed. When he's ahead 0-2, I really thought, all right, he's putting him away. And I'm going to hear Gary Cohen give us the Mets win. And we don't get it. He hits him. Now, minor, itsy-bitsy credit to Diaz. He strikes out Bryce Harper, so the game doesn't end right then and there in the 9th inning. And if you thought that was enough pain, if you thought, well, there's your pain, let's call it a night, we had to actually endure all the disastrous actions from that 10th inning. I hate extra innings. I hate the extra inning rule, and it feels like our team just rips our balls off in extra innings every time. Every time. It's like, let's find a new way to lose in extra innings. So what do we got this time? We got Sean Reed Foley on the mound. He's set to go against the slumping Nick Castellanos, and he throws a ball in the dirt that if Tomas Nido is as good as everybody thinks he is defensively, he blocks that effing ball, and he doesn't. They call it a wild pitch. I wanted to protest and call it pass ball in my scorebook, and now you just gift wrap the Phillies a runner on third base? You just hand it over? That's the other play that drove me nuts. I don't even mind walking Castellanos. I don't mind that. What I mind is throwing a wild pitch. You can't just put the winning run or the go-ahead run on third base. You got to make the Phillies earn it. And so what happens? Bryson Stott flies out to right field. Here comes a run. I mean, you can't make it up. So the run literally scores because Tomas Nido, who's only there for his defense, can't block an easy ball in the dirt. And it was an easy ball. Don't give me this crap. That was a blockable ball. That one run, as they go to the bottom of the 10th inning, felt like you can't lose this game on that run. Just come back and tie the game. Even if we have to go to the 11th, you cannot lose that game on that run. And Joey Wendell steps up, and this should have been his death sentence here, even though it probably was the offer he took the following day. The Mets go to bunting with Joey Wendell. All right, Hoffman, be honest with me, and I will give you my opinion right after, I promise. When Joey Wendell's up with a runner on second and nobody out, and we're down by a run, are you in favor of bunting, or are you like, nah, man, swing away, let's go, can't give an out away?
With Wendell, at this point, I mean, honestly, I don't trust anything he does, so I'm almost going to take the Jeff McNeil approach. Drag, bunt, do whatever you can to move the runner, try to get on, whatever it takes.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm not against the bunt. Now, I know he's a left-hand hitter. He could hit the ground ball to second base. I get it. Give me that opportunity to just have a runner on third. And maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. I mean, Bader at a weak ground ball to third base may not have mattered, but give me that opportunity. And this son of a bitch can't get the bunt down. You're a freaking mate. Get the bunt down. Just get the freaking bunt down. And he can't.
You know,
and I had no what?
Now, I just got to stop right here because,
go ahead,
dude, This is bunting they can't do well. They can't steal bases. They can't pick guys off. Those are fundamentals of baseball. Excuse me, but like Buck Showalter, things weren't that bad. We talk about Carlos Mendoza. He seems like a good manager so far, but there's some basic shit going on right now that they can't do right. Last year, fundamentals were a thing that disappeared, which is why I think got Buck gone, and it's continuing now. Is it the players or the coaching?
I think the bunting problem goes further than that. I think guys haven't bunted in a long time. It goes back to the whole argument I used to make about the pitcher hitting. People would complain about it and say, Evan, why do you want the pitcher hitting? They're all so bad at it. And my answer would be, do you know why they can't hit? Like, let's fix that instead of just erasing the pitcher hitting. Let's fix why they can't hit. And the reason they can't hit is because they never hit. They never get the opportunity to hit in the minor leagues. Now, that argument's over. I lost. Okay, it doesn't matter that pitchers can't hit because they don't hit anymore. When it comes to bunting, it's the same thing. They don't ask guys to bunt. And quite frankly, 90% of players should know how to bunt. Now, you want to tell me the biggest superstars and the biggest sluggers don't have to bunt? Fine. Everybody should know how to freaking bunt. Especially, you want to know why? You know, I don't know why they should. I know sabermetrics led the bunt out of the game. Here's why the bunt should matter again. The bunt should matter again because of this stupid extra inning rule. That's literally why. Because there are scenarios where bunting makes sense. So it's not even about your sabermetrics. It's about this rule. And it feels like very few guys are capable of bunting. Look, that's where I'll give Nito a lot of credit. I give this guy a lot of crap. I just ripped him for the wild pitch. Tomas Nito can bunt. He's a damn good bunter. So thank you, Tomas Nito. But more than the bunt, more than the master himself, Harrison Bader grounding out Jeff McNeil. You are 0 for 4. You got an effing runner on second base. You can be a hero. And he hits the laziest, crappiest, hump dick line drive or pop up to shortstop, whatever the hell it was. I don't even know how to describe it. He is such a problem right now. And I'm not saying DFA him. I'm not saying trade him because he has no value. I just need the man to wake up. But I think we all need to make a promise now. I'm going to make this promise. I'm going to do it. I'm going to raise my hand. I don't care how hot Jeff McNeil gets. I don't care how much he looks reminiscent of the guy he was in 2022. I make you a promise that I'm done with him. That once he gets hot, if he gets hot, and ever enhances his value once again, I want him gone. You trade him. That's what I would say. That's what I would say. And that's tough to do. It's easy to say now, trade a guy when he's hitting 210 or 220, or in Jeff's case, I guess it's around 230. It's more difficult to say that once a guy gets going. I am assuming at some point he will get going. And when he gets going, trade him. I'm done. A year and a half of doing nothing. I'm done. I appreciate his versatility. I appreciate the ability to play the outfield and play second base. I know he's been a lifelong Met. I get all of that. I think now I have come to that conclusion of, hey, let him get his value up and then trade his ass. That's where I'm at. But what a horrible game. Horrible. And again, I said this at the top of the Rico today. Write down every great win. Don't write a whole paragraph. Just write down, a bad loss. And then get back to it when there's another bad loss and remind yourself, was this the worst loss of the year? I've done that. In fact, let me tell you real quick some of the games I have up there. So I'm not completely full of crap with this. So
I'm guessing a San Francisco Giant game because I feel like those were pretty bad.
No, I didn't have any of the Giant games up there. The West Coast games. Remember, they had just won 2 out of 3 against LA. Wasn't that? You're thinking of last year's Giant. Was it last year? No, 2 years ago.
They looked pretty bad this time around, too. Maybe they weren't as impactful. Maybe it wasn't a crushing blow. They just got mercied, basically.
Yeah, they couldn't hit. And Severino pitched well in one game, and then Logan Webb they couldn't hit. You know what it was? They had just beat the Dodgers 2 out of 3. And I think their attitude was, it's a good West Coast trip.
And then Conforto beat the crap out of us.
Yeah. And then they won the finale. So it was almost like they salvaged the 3 games in San Francisco. I got the 2 extra inning losses to the Tigers earlier this season. The 5-0 game in 10 innings, the Monday game that got them to 0-4. I got the first game of the doubleheader that they blew against Detroit, where they lost 6-3 in 11. Michael Tonkin took another loss. I got the Severino game against the Cubs, where he has a no-hitter into the 8th inning, and Joey Wendell decides I'm not throwing home, where he didn't want to chase down the lead run. And then Edwin Diaz gives up a run in the 9th inning. That was the home run to Christopher Morel game. We've got the other game against the Cubs where they lost 1-0, pathetically. We've got the loss to Tampa where Diaz was 1 strike away and gave up a home run to Randy Arozarena. And then we got the game from Monday against Philadelphia. Those are the games that top my list of horrible losses in 2024. And I do believe that Monday takes the cake.
How many? That's 7, I believe. How many games in total do you have that are great?
Oh, that's on another document. I'm not pulling that up today. I'm not in a happy mood to talk about that. We'll do that on a future, Rico.
I was curious to see if you had any. I wasn't sure.
Sunday, the game against Atlanta. I mean, freaking Brandon Nimmo had a game-winning home run.
You know
the
what?
Game against the Cardinals where Vientos hit a walk-off home run and Baty had a 2-out hit to tie it. Now, both of those games were salvage series. I admit that. They were both save your ass. Same thing with the comeback against the Tigers, their first win of the season, the finale of that doubleheader. Those are 3 that just jump out of me off the top of my head. But the problem with all 3 is they're salvage games. They were just like, hey, we're thrilled. It could have been a disaster.
They're salvage games / they were terrible the whole game, and then they got lucky at the end. I mean, to me, I don't feel ecstatic about that. I feel like, well, we got away with one. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it's a good win, but it's still, this team doesn't make me feel confident at all in any sort of way.
Hopefully they change that. I have no confidence going into these 2 games in Philadelphia. I fully expect that it's going to be a disaster before they go to Miami, but maybe, hopefully, possibly, they can turn this thing around. Because right now, my confidence, not high. You can email the pod to ricob@gmail.com, to ricob@gmail.com. You can leave us a voicemail. We'll lose some voicemails next time around, so leave one if you have an opinion, good or bad, on this team or anything we've talked about. The number to call is 725-222-8699. 725-222-8699. Now I'm going to go watch the Knicks game. Goodbye from Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.